You're listening to the Align to Amplify podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Sarah and Haley.
Hi, I am Sarah Garrison. I am an intuitive business healer, and I am here with
Haley Lewis, brand accelerator and executive creative advisor.
And today we have a guest with us, Siera Sombrosky. I'm probably botching your last name, Siera.
No, you're okay.
And Siera, tell us what you do.
So I am an intuitive holistic strategist, which is a very complicated way to say that I am 20 years of business consultant and have combined that with my work in holistic health counseling and grief facilitation, and also my spiritual intuitive gifts to be able to work with business owners who are going through a lot of transition, some kind of major life loss, whether that's divorce or empty nest or the death of a parent. It can look all different kinds of forms. But I work with those business owners as they're transitioning through those hard times to really help them rediscover themselves and realign their life and their business to go along with that new version of them. So,
oh my gosh, I love that. So, as a business owner, I have gone through a huge transformation in the last 2 years. Well, 3 years now.
Since COVID, really.
Since COVID. And honestly, when you talked about the grief part plays a huge part for me in that transformation. Like huge grief, but also just like even the smaller grief, the things that the little pity party that happened. I think probably with everybody to some extent. But navigating that grief. And that's why I'm so glad that I found, that I was able to open up to Sarah. And Sarah was able to help me move through some of that. But I'm curious, because it's such an intimate work that you do, how do you, when you onboard a client, how do you get that trust for them to completely be transparent about the grief? Because a lot of times, like when I was grieving, I was in full on anger. I was going through all the stages, right? And I didn't know. I couldn't really identify my own root. And Sarah was able to do some work with me, and then I'm like, oh, well, that's surprising. So how do you tell us the process of meeting with a business owner who has contacted you about working through grief?
Yeah, grief comes from all kinds of places. And I think that the reality of the situation is, in particular with business owners, which is the reason why I focus on them, we have so much responsibility. We're responsible for the income coming in. We may be responsible for employees. Like it's on top of whatever family roles we have. And so we tend to compartmentalize these things even more so than normal people do, because we feel like there's all this extra responsibility and pressure put on us. And the truth of the matter is that grief comes anytime we lose anything that we hold as part of our identity, right? So that's why I say grief comes not just from the death of a parent or the death of a spouse or whatever. It can come from the fact that you never fully got over that your mother was completely unavailable to you, right? It can be completely that you always wanted to have children and could never find yourself to be pregnant. That's a huge grief that's stored inside you that you have to process. So a lot of times people don't know what their grief is, but what they do know is that things don't feel like they fit in their life anymore. Like they can't find the stuff that used to make them happy. They have basically nothing. Like there's this apathy that lays over your life. And you find it harder. You don't feel like you're really connecting to your kids, your friend. Like there's this disconnect that's pulling back, and they're like, something's not right. Something's not right. For me, I've always been one of those people, probably you ladies have been too, but I was always one of these people that even as a kid, adults would trust me and like start telling me all kinds of shit that is not. I'm allowed to swear. They would
okay,
they
we
would
say
tell
shit.
me all kinds of stuff that like, well, I'm like a random kid in a grocery store, and why are you telling me that your husband of 20 years just left you? You know, like, so I've always had that. So
Is
I
it
don't
just
really know.
it's an attraction thing?
Mhm.
People are
Yeah.
drawn to you. So would that be like an energetic
Yeah.
attraction?
I would say so. I think energetically, there's clearly something where I feel like a safe space. Like I feel like a safe container that people often just want to like unload to me straight away. As far as like identifying the way Sarah helped you with your stuff to kind of get to the root, I mean, that's part of the spiritual gifts that I fully leverage into. And it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, spirit tells me exactly they can tell me an exact childhood memory. They can tell me an exact incident, and that becomes a starting point. And I think everybody's different. So some people, I start asking questions until they get to that spot on their own. Some people I can just say straight away, like, here's what I really know. So what do you remember about this? And that becomes our starting point. So it's like cheating.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you talked about your spiritual gifts.
Uh-huh.
Have you always known you have spiritual gifts, or did you like recognize them over time, or did they just suddenly dump on you at a certain age?
So I've always, when I was a kid, I used to see and hear dead people the way I hear and see you.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't know that they weren't real. And so it got me into a lot of trouble. I didn't have any kind of context. My family didn't have any context for understanding. So instead, I'd be getting yelled at. Where did you hear that from? Who told you that? And I would say, that man over there. And then it'd be, why are you lying? Like it was honestly, it was quite traumatic. And when I would go to bed at night, I can remember them like coming in the room. It was terrifying, honestly, as a kid. I think I'm not alone in this for sure, but I definitely shut it down. And like I said, I think for so much of my life, I didn't have a framework for it. So I had no idea. I thought it was a lot of times just my imagination would come up with these really incredible insights and ideas, which is how I was using it for business consulting. Or I can remember like being on a plane one time and talking to this guy. It was a red-eye flight from Chicago, and I really needed to sleep. And he was really annoying me because he wouldn't stop talking to me, like I was saying about earlier. And so to shut him up all of a sudden, and I start spewing all this stuff. Well, it's because when you were 14, you had to go into foster care and da 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 da. And he was like stunned, right? And literally was like, who the hell are you? How do you know this about me? Like, I mean, I totally freaked him the hell out.
It's like, are you
And
a
even
private
then, I didn't
investigator?
know.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
even then, like I said, I just thought it was like some weird that I was making this stuff up, and it would just be right a lot.
Just
So
wait. Just wait. That guy's watching this episode,
And he's like, I remember
could
that
be.
woman.
I was gonna say that's actually part of the reason why I didn't reveal more details about the person or and just left it at that. Because yeah, maybe he really is.
Yeah, you just never know.
Never know.
And maybe
gonna be
he's
like,
been
"Oh
trying
my
to
God."
find you. Like,
Could be.
be like, I
Could
need to
be.
talk to that woman that spewed all that crazy shit to me.
Exactly. Oh yeah. I mean, I would think if he's watching, he's gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember that. I'm pretty sure it left an impression on him for a long time.
I would think so.
It would leave an impression on me.
Absolutely. So I'm sorry. I have so many questions because this is not my world. So, when I hear these things, I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I think the biggest question is, so you've had this gift from birth, basically. Mm-hmm. Then you shut it down.
Mm-hmm. Largely.
Mostly, yeah. And I'm assuming at some point then you realized the gift was a benefit and started to open back up to it, or, and then to manage it?
What I guess a good way to put it too is, what was a catalyst that started you to reopen it?
I was in my 30s and I thought I was schizophrenic.
I've had those moments.
To be real clear about it, I totally thought I was losing my mind. I would hear so many, all of a sudden I think maybe before that, I'm always a little fuzzy about the timeline. Before that, I had gone back to school for holistic health and counseling. And so part of that, I was learning about meditation and stuff. And so I was being all these mindfulness practices, and I was starting to meditate on my own. And literally, I can remember setting the table for dinner, and all of a sudden I have all this overwhelming voices in my head. And I was like, oh my God, I'm losing my shit. I know I'm stressed, but I was a single parent, and it happened a bunch of times. And I just prayed my ass off. I just kept praying because I kept thinking, I can't get committed. Who's going to take care of my daughter? There has to be a way out of this. And simultaneously, or overlapping in time, I went to a hairdresser, and she was like, I have this other client who has spiritual gifts. She's a devout Catholic, Franciscan Third Order. So she just prays and gets answers from people, but she doesn't always know that the answers were who they're for until she meets them. And so she wants to try and see if she can do it in person with strangers. Basically, she wanted to test. Would you be open to that? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I wasn't really into it. But I was like, it's not going to hurt me, so who cares? And so when I went, like I said, and this was all at that same time frame. And so when I went, the two ladies before me go in, they come out crying. They have these huge, impactful experiences. They're saying all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, this might be really good. Who knows what I'm going to learn? And I go in, and she opens up the Bible and starts reading passages to me right away. And I'm like, shit, what kind of nonsense is all this? And then she said to me that you have this gift and you're meant to use this gift, and proceeded to go on for an hour about it. And I was very underwhelmed and unimpressed with the whole experience. And she was like, do you have any questions? And I was like, look, I was really just hoping that you were going to tell me if I should break up with my boyfriend or not. And she looked me in the eyes and she said, I'm not telling you that because you can get your own answers and you already know. And I was like, oh, well, then. So the lady offered to start working with me, mentor me in a proper, generational hand-down mentoring kind of way in spiritual gifts. And I did not really take it at first until I started a few more times of hearing voices in my head that I was pretty sure I was nuts. And then I was like, maybe, all of a sudden it clicks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not. Maybe she's right. Maybe I really do have something. And so she taught me how to, really learn how to use it, and just, it's like a muscle. I mean, we all have it. We all have intuition and a connection to spirit. Some of us are just a little more gifted at it than others, but yeah, I just got.
That's really interesting. So when you met with her, she recognized your gift before you knew you had a gift.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way it works is spirit tells you things. So probably when I walked in the room, they must have said to her, oh, she's ready. And we need to use her more than we already are. I don't know. I don't know what she's never told me actually how it came through for her exactly. But yeah, she knew in some way.
It's interesting when you said she was reading scripture. So I have a very similar experience where I was seriously at a point where I was going crazy, and I had two different people to call. Pastor just happened to answer my call, and I met with him, and he went into the Bible and read about the gifts of the Spirit. So I'm just, part of me is I bet you that's what she read to you, was all about the gifts of the Spirit. Mm-hmm. Because,
yeah. And protection passages. I want to say maybe it was Psalm 93, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
About protection too. She was reading to me about protection and all that. So
I would assume that protection is pretty critical when using your spiritual gifts, because if you're that open, you need to have a gatekeeper, because you don't want just anything or anyone coming in and messing with you.
Yeah, thanks fully to some early traumas and challenges in life, I was really good at being shut down. So
the gates were up.
I was kind of like I mean, I look at it now, I know that now, right? Like that the survival instincts that were in me and the places that I was operating from were also energetically protecting me from connecting to or being, having major issues with things like that. But then certainly once you start to know and understand, I think it's always important. Like Sarah, I'm sure you still do protection work for yourself, right?
I mean, I think I do it automatically for the same exact reasons.
Yeah.
There's just, when you're a little kid, it's scary. Like, because nobody can help you with it. It's a frightening thing when you're seeing things and you're hearing things and things happen and everyone's like, oh no, that's just this house settling, or you're crazy. And so you learn to put up barriers and you learn to put up walls around it. And I mean, yes, I do some protection type of things, but it's just inherent now. Like, I don't even have to really think about it. It just happens. I do a little ritual before I do like a theta healing where I zip myself up to make sure that like nothing comes in, because I'm going to be going out of my body. But other than that, I don't. It's innate, kind of like you, Siera.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone through phases where sometimes I feel a little more open or maybe a less. I don't know. I just always know. When I need to like make a conscious, concerted ritual of protecting myself or not.
Yep.
But I tell, anybody that thinks that they're highly sensitive, empathic, that to get in that practice for yourself, because until you have good control over it, like people always say to me, like, how do you get message? Like, how do you connect? Like, I don't have to do that anymore. You can ask me something, and if you are open to it and you're okay with it, it'll just come in like that. I don't got to do a ritual to get, it can be the waitress. That's happened. And I knew that it would freak her the hell out. I'm trying not to swear. I knew it would really freak her out. So I did leave her like a little bit of a note, literally on the back of a napkin, was like, I know you're going to think this is really crazy, but if you want to know, I had this person, it was somebody that had crossed over, that he was really adamant about trying to connect with her, and he hadn't been gone that long, and they were both younger, and I just knew I had to leave a note. I don't always do that. But either way, I don't have to like perform a ritual to, like Sarah was saying, to protect myself, just like I don't have to perform any kind of ritual anymore to bring it all in. I never did.
I think for me, I've learned rituals like over the last several years. But yeah, it's like for you, same, I'm curious, have you had to learn some rituals just because you've been in this world, or?
I like to, like I said, and I think I like rituals. I like doing all the hocus pocus and light a candle and spin myself around and burn the resin or whatever, right? Like, because it feels fun to me. It feels kind of magical to me. And that's something that was really robbed of my early life. I didn't have a lot of that wonder and magic like that. So I find it a lot of fun to participate in those things now. But I think maybe early in my mentorship, there was a certain amount of like, taking the deep breaths and like centering myself and doing all that stuff before I gave readings. But that was just out of confidence. It was never because I needed to. It was just because some part of me felt better about like, well, if I do this, then it'll work. I don't know.
And you since learned that you don't need to do it to make it work.
Yeah, just like I didn't when I was sitting on the plane with that guy and I didn't even know anything. Like I didn't know that I even had gifts, right? Like I didn't do anything. I was trying to get to sleep. He was annoying me. I wasn't like count to 10 backwards and snap my fingers or nothing and I'm gonna start telling you stuff. It wasn't like that. But I did go through that phase when I was learning to really be fully cognizant of it and work with it in a relationship, because I think it is a relationship. That I wanted to like have the little ritual around things. Yeah, yeah, gave me confidence.
I like that. Confidence it makes a big difference in any line of work that we choose to do. And
Absolutely.
Specifically, in your line of work and working, so do you focus mainly on facilitating and guiding people through grief, or is that just one aspect?
It's one aspect. I mean, it's kind of the crux of it, because the reality of the situation is, like I said, grief comes from all kinds of places. I haven't found a particular wound yet that doesn't have some sort of grief attached to it, no matter where it comes from in somebody. And those unprocessed wounds are your subconscious, your unconscious operating mode, for the lack of a better term. And so you are making choices. You are, even like in a very woo kind of way, you're energetically putting off whatever is in alignment to that. And I always say you have to think about it like, when we try to compartmentalize it, it starts pulling so much energy from all the other places to keep it contained, right? And so I think largely people don't really pay attention or go, oh, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I need to look at something for myself, until it shows up in your money or your physical health. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, damn, my life is falling apart. I don't know what's happening, right? And so now all of a sudden you maybe get a little more desperate, because most of the people I work with are not woo people. I would say most people that I work with, have regular businesses.
I love that, because Sarah and I have talked about this for quite a while, is that, the benefits of some of the woo world and the woo practices really need to be mainstreamed into just average life, regular business, because, I'm kind of in the regular, business world, and sometimes there's a mental block on, oh, that's the crazy woo person, and they don't take it seriously. But, it's kind of like, open up your mind a little bit. And if you really I look at executive summaries, because I don't read, and I like bottom line results. And if you really look at the results driven things like that, what you and Sarah do, but you have to be open to it. And so, like, I feel like we're kind of like cracking open this shell right now, and we're shining a light on this whole set of tools that can be used by regular Joes like me to magnify, align, and then amplify podcast, their business. And, the whole, I understand like the mindset work and like the abundance aspect of things. When you change and you heal within, that all of a sudden that law of attraction just starts coming at you. And so, yeah, bring the woo in. We just need to be bringing it.
Yeah, and it's one of these things where I've always been very pragmatic and very practical, very logical about everything. It's 100% the reason why I was in business consulting for as long as I was, and it touched as many industries as I did. And a lot of them were in construction and real estate. So it was not only, there's a little bit of archaic kind of mentality, right? It was not only not woo, but it was very masculine. It was like I said, even maybe a little archaic in beliefs, and they had enough trouble with me being a girl.
The good old boy
Yeah.
network. Yeah.
And a lot of times, like I said, for a lot of that career, I didn't know that I was getting intuitive insights for someone, or that I was getting intuitive insights and, oh, we need to pursue, like, and it would be real specific, like, you need to reach out to this company. Like, I'd be looking down a list and it'd be like, that's the one. That's who you contact right there. But I would get these crazy results for people. And, and it was a big part, and Siera knows this because we know each other, but it was a big part of, in the back of my mind, I had formed so much credibility in a really results driven, very pragmatic, left brain, traditional business role. I didn't necessarily want to step out as being a woo person. And so I had been creating these different practices that were running separately, even though I was using them crosswise. I was never like addressing that. I was never coming out and standing in that and saying that. But there's a ton of science behind it. I still lean on all that all the time. Energetic stuff is real. That's not just woo. You don't have to call it law of attraction. It is energy. It is vibration. Vibrations will rise to meet each other. That's science, So there's a lot of stuff. If we frame it up the right way and we say the right things to people, then they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like, well, there you go. See, it's not all crazy woo-woo stuff.
And with your insight, I love it that you were like, you were kind of operating behind the scenes in your other businesses. And I'm sure that your like counsel and your reports and everything were just like, you were knocking it out of the park. And they were like, geez, your strategy is spot on. Because
Oh,
you're like,
absolutely.
I have a little inside track.
Yeah. I can remember one of my contracts going to a Women in Tech Day event that was like an hour and a half away. I didn't really know why I was going. I am not in tech. It had no relevance to me, but I knew with certainty that I was supposed to be there that day. And I ended up meeting in person the chief innovation officer, who was a woman at the time. I don't even know if she's still there, for the NFL. And that was relevant to what I was doing, like in a super giant, big picture kind of way. Like, whoever thinks they're gonna, like, I'm gonna find a connection to the NFL. But I did, and I got to the chief innovation officer, and we connected there at that event, and like went on from there. And it was just like one of these things. Like, people are like, "How did you know? Like, how did you do that?" I had no experience in that kind of realm at all, but I would have these really incredible results that I just had no explanation for. So anything is really possible when we start to listen to that internal part of ourselves. And that is pretty mainstream. Pick up Forbes magazine, go to the bookstore in the business section and look at how many books have intuitive in the title, right? Like, everyone has intuition. It's there. We just, like I said, it's like a muscle. We have to practice it. We have to understand it. We have to trust it more than anything else. And executives tend to do that a lot, whether they're consciously doing it or not. So when you can start to kind of make that parallel for them, that you can also get a boost of it, an extra layer of it with somebody like myself or Siera that can help them in that way. Like, you're just leveraging another resource. Why would you say no?
No, I love that. It's kind of like most people call it, oh, I was in the right place at the right time. Or, what a happy coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't believe in coincidences. And I do believe you can be in the right place at the right time, but something orchestrated that.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. I 100%.
And you had to listen to it, right? Because you could make a choice to have not gone or been like, I don't want to drive there that day, or I don't know what the hell I'm doing this for, whatever, right? Like,
yeah, because like in business, if you really look back and you like, and you track, you chart like the open doors, the opportunities, the conversations, the connections, the things that happen where you would think, oh, that was just a random thing, but wow, look what came from it.
Exactly.
And if you were to map it, it would be like, there is a greater plan happening here. And there's no way that, like a lot of the things that I've done in my entrepreneurial life, there's no way I could have done them on my own. When you look at just that path of, how I navigated through different things and the people that came into my life and that kind of stuff, it's like, there is no way that I could have really sat down and like mapped this out and made it happen. It's like, because it would blow you away. The stuff that ends up popping up in the process. So yeah.
I agree. And in a negative way sometimes too. You're like, what the hell were the chances that, this was going to happen? Like in a bad way, sometimes we view it as bad, but either way, if you want to accept it, it'll show you that there's sort of supernatural energetics really that are drawing you, that are pulling you, that are helping you get onto a particular path. And when we line up to it, it just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. Good and bad. It's kind of like that forging fire. It makes us who we are. I
100%.
would not be the person I am today without the good and the bad. That
Absolutely.
we need that opposition because it like, I don't know if it buffs off the rough spots or it makes us tougher or it gives us more experience or more empathy, more, opening us to more opportunity. But it's the forging fire of adversity.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's where we kind of started this conversation, right? Was around talking about grief. And I always say it may sound or strike someone as kind of morbid, but the death, the loss of something or someone is a transformational gateway because it does make you see everything differently all of a sudden. Your coffee doesn't smell the same, right? Talking to your mom on the phone doesn't feel the same. Your job doesn't feel the same. Your business doesn't feel the same. You're questioning your other relationships. It's a gateway to have us really do some self-evaluation. And when you do that, you get closer to your own truth. And when you get closer to your own truth, then everything else will align.
Oh, there it is.
That's it.
Oh my gosh, there it is. And 100% agree. Yeah. That was the full body tingly thing happening right there.
So Haley does have a gift. She can when truth is spoken, she knows. There's just this knowing of the truth. So
you spoke the truth. So thank you. That was the truth bomb from today's conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure. I get this. I'm the same way. Even when I'm in session with somebody, if I give myself the chills, I always say to them, this is a super, super deep truth that you have to hear, that you needed to know so fully. So yeah, I recognize that. Oh my gosh. And I recognize your gifts too, Haley.
We might have to have a private conversation.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do that.
I would love that.
It has definitely been interesting. We've had other guests on that also have intuitive gifts, and Haley not having those. Well, saying, "Well, I'm from the main. I'm a business owner. This is not my wheelhouse." Everyone so far has said, "Well, you have them too. Mm-hmm. You have the gifts."
You guys are all dragging me, kicking and screaming, but no, I'm not kicking and screaming. Seriously, though, I'm learning and maybe accepting or maybe just opening up my life, my thought process. And it's all a journey for me, which I really like. And I'm hoping that others, we can bring this kind of information to others that are going through the same thing, that are maybe in the middle of that refining fire, and they're like, "What the heck? I don't know, I don't know who I am, or this is not me." I mean, that was a big one for me. This is not me. This is not my life.
Yeah. All of a sudden, you're like, none of this fits anymore. I always say
Yeah.
you start to feel like you're an alien in your own life. You're like, how the hell did I get here? And why am I doing this shit?
Yeah.
Like,
And
that's the reality.
You're kind of foggy and you're like, oh my gosh, my reality has been ripped.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a rip in my reality and I need to find something that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think is the kernel and the beginning of, you know, that interpersonal journey. And
Sure.
and so hopefully this is a conduit for anybody who is experiencing that grief, having that, you know, in the middle of that refining fire, don't understand how they got there or what they're doing, but they're recognizing that this is not where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has been amazing. So how do people get a hold of you that are listening today and they're like, I need to talk to her right now?
Okay,
What's the best way?
Sure. So the easiest way is probably just to go to one of my social media outlets, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Facebook and Instagram, I'm Siera with one R, Intuitively Knows. And
That's
on
perfect.
LinkedIn, yeah, I'm just my first and last name, Siera Sombrosky. So that's pretty easy.
That's awesome. And we will have all of those links on the show notes. So anybody watching, I highly recommend. I had a session with Siera. You know, healers need healers, so that's the way it works. And she called some things, especially about my trip. Like I don't think I ever circled back about this, but you know, I was thinking I'm going to be gone for 4 weeks. I mean, I don't know if you remember when I first was talking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe 4 weeks, maybe 6 at the most. And Sierra's like, no. She's like 6 minimum. You're going to be gone a lot longer than that. And I was gone exactly 8 weeks, which is what she called, you know. So little things like that.
Probably gone longer if you could have.
Well, she leaves tomorrow. She's leaving me again.
I know, for another 3 weeks.
We've opened up the gypsy traveler in her.
Yeah, it's happening. So we've
that
got
phase of her life.
I've got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be traveling too when you get back, so I can't complain. But seriously,
I come back.
I do miss her.
I come back for a week and she's gone for a month. So you know.
Oh, yeah, I want to hear about that. I want to hear where Haley's going too. I know where Sarah's going.
Mine isn't as exciting. I get to go oversee the install of a septic tank.
Oh, yeah, it's
not glamorous. So yeah,
nope,
there's that.
Sure is not.
No. But at least it's not full. I mean, there's the benefit.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
On that note.
Septic tanks, grief, spiritual gifts. You heard it all right here.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Siera. And thank you. And thank you, everyone else, for watching along. And we will see y'all next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.